Hello, and thank you for joining When Drupal Met Gatsby, an early adopter case study. My name is Madeline. I'm a senior developer at Mediacurrent, and today Jay Callicott is joining me. He's the VP of Technical Operations. So a little bit about me. I've been doing this web development thing for 7 years now. As a senior developer at Mediacurrent, I enjoy mentoring others, setting up my clients and my teammates for success, and really invested in how we can use open source to not only grow Mediacurrent, but grow our client success as well.
Hello, Gatsby Camp. My name is Jay Callicott, and I have worked with open source technology for a pretty long time now. I joined Mediacurrent in 2009, and I've been a Drupal contributor and developer for about 15 years or so. I'm part of the presentation today because I've overseen the Mediacurrent.com website for probably the last decade, and I was also part of the decision to move our site to get decoupled and eventually Gatsby.js. Mediacurrent has been an early adopter of Gatsby, and so we're just really excited to be part of the community now and share our experience with you all. And so with that, I will hand things over to Madeline to cover the agenda for today.
Cool, so enough about us. Let's talk about Mediacurrent. Mediacurrent is the open source expansion partner. We help organizations that want to elevate and advance their open source digital experience. And we do that by aligning with our partners' business goals and needs and solving them with open source technologies. So all of our clients use open source technologies, and we actually have quite a few that use Gatsby. And this includes some really successful projects like MagMutual, Sandy Springs in Georgia, as well as our own Mediacurrent.com website. So our vision is to empower every person on the planet with the innovative freedom and community impact that open source technology offers. So today we're going to cover our origin story with Mediacurrent.com, why we chose Gatsby, go over the architecture overview, and the story of our migration to Gatsby Cloud, as well as the key takeaways. So first I'm going to let Jay kick off with the origin story for Mediacurrent.com.
So first I want to cover the story of how we got to where we are now. It's been kind of a long and winding road, but I'm pretty happy with where we eventually landed. On this slide, we're going to look at the timeline, which started back in 2016. We actually didn't move to Gatsby.js until 2019. But it's important to look at this whole timeline because the decision to move to decoupled is what eventually led us down the path to move to Gatsby.js in 2019. So back in 2016, we decided to move to a decoupled architecture. Our previous website designs were taking a long time, and I think the process suffered from a couple of problems in particular. One, we had the classic problem where the cobbler's children have no shoes. In other words, we were so busy working on client projects that our own website would just take a long time to complete. The other issue that we faced was basically we're having to do a big Drupal upgrade and redesign at the exact same time. And so this also made the project just drag on and on for a long time. So example, when Drupal 7 came out, we did a big redesign and we did a big upgrade to move everything to Drupal 7. So that led me to the decision to champion a decoupled approach. I thought, well, if we could break up the Drupal backend from the decoupled frontend, then we won't have to update both at the same time. And we could break one really big project into two smaller projects. So I liked that angle a lot. I also wanted to get to a place where we could just continually iterate. I didn't want us doing big redesigns anymore. My thought was we could just basically iterate forever without doing a complete teardown and rebuild. And so the decoupled approach would just make that whole thing easier. There's some other reasons as well. I thought we could find some performance benefits. And the other big benefit was just that we could have more creative freedom on the front end side. In Drupal's past, sometimes the theme layer has felt restrictive. And being a digital agency, I wanted us to not have any sort of creative limitations. So we like the decoupled approach as a concept, but the implementations that we were seeing were just way too complex for an agency website. Now, at this point, we had already launched weather.com in the past, and so it's not like we were afraid of a tough project. We just didn't want something that was overly complex and hard to maintain. Now, one of the things that make these types of projects so complex was that even if you're using a fancy JavaScript framework like React or Angular, you still had to do some server-side rendering for SEO. And nothing we saw out there was really fitting with what we wanted. We just wanted a solution that was simple and had a straightforward architecture. So I really liked the concept of static builds. Even back then, I'd played around with Jekyll. We had taken a look at Gatsby. It was still in its infancy. And so we thought we needed something that was ready for prime time. Now, the idea of static builds was sort of incepted into my brain a long time ago when I learned about the White House website project being launched on Drupal in 2009 with a static front end. So they're basically doing some stuff to essentially like crawl the website, create static copies of each page. And so, of course, for a site like that, it gave them a lot of performance benefits and security benefits and all of that. And so that just kind of stuck in my brain. I really liked Jekyll. Of course, I love Drupal. And I didn't really see anyone trying to integrate the two together, which just seemed like a really simple solution to our problem. So in a nutshell, if you're familiar with how Jekyll works, it's a static generator. And by default, it runs on Markdown files. And so I thought, well, we'll just have Drupal write to Markdown files. And we did some proof of concept stuff, and we got enough working to forge ahead with a full redesign in Jekyll, keeping our Drupal 8 backend, which we launched in 2018. So let me move back to our timeline here just for a little bit, and then we'll get deeper into why we chose Gatsby. Now, along the way, we did make some mistakes, which I won't get into too many of the gory details. Basically, we were committing our Markdown content to Git, which caused a lot of commits. And then we had some conflicts with our Jekyll code, which was also in Git. One decision that we made pretty early on that I think was a good one was to move to Netlify. That did simplify some things. And I do believe in retrospect, we could have made this whole architecture work more smoothly. But in 2018, Gatsby was just so far ahead. It was such a better solution that it made more sense. Instead of trying to like fix problems with our current setup, it made sense to just move the whole front end to Gatsby. So in 2019, we relaunched the website in Gatsby. The Drupal 8 backend stayed mostly the same, which was good. But then all the front end components were refactored into React components. So yeah, we did it. Now there are still some bumps in the road to come. Madeline's going to cover some of that because remember, back then we didn't have Gatsby Cloud as it exists today. So everything was great. We loved Gatsby, but there was still more work to do. Let's talk about why Mediacurrent chose Gatsby. We ended up choosing Gatsby for some of the same reasons that we wanted a static front-end solution in the first place. What was unique about Gatsby was its whole source plugin library. Gatsby had a source plugin that was specific for Drupal, and it connected almost perfectly to Drupal's JSON API module. Now, this made total sense because now Gatsby could pull data out of Drupal, which was basically like the opposite way we were doing things in Jekyll. And we just really liked that approach a lot. We also liked that it was based on React. By that time, React had emerged as the leading JavaScript framework. And so we just felt like this was the exact right solution for our business. We are going to be able to use the best front end, keep our Drupal backend, and just the whole architecture made a lot of sense to us, not only for our project, but for similar types of projects like this. And like I mentioned before, there's still some issues to come, things to sort out. Builds were slow. Netlify gave us some problems. We didn't have a preview solution yet just because it didn't really exist. But again, all of that stuff got figured out eventually. So Madeline's going to cover our architecture, and then she's going to cover kind of our move to Gatsby Cloud where we are today. And so I'll hand things over to Madeline.
All right, so I'll talk to you guys a little bit about our architecture for Mediacurrent.com and what our tech stack looks like. So our tech stack, we have a Drupal 8 site. Next stop would be Drupal 9, of course. We have that hosted on Pantheon. That's where we publish our content, and our editors spend a lot of their time dynamically creating components and setting those deployments to go through. And then on the front end, we have our Gatsby site, and we have that both being built and hosted in Gatsby Cloud. So the heart of our architecture is component-based development. The way we do that is we use paragraphs in Drupal with React components in Gatsby. So, even though the site is rendered statically, it's still a very dynamic content editing experience for our editors. And the way we approach the paragraph-based design and development is we connect the pieces with the React component by using GraphQL fragments. So we have a lot of queries that individually checks for each component, and in the end we get a dynamic page rendered. And now the fun part, we want to talk about our migration to Gatsby Cloud. So we're Gatsby all the way. So as Jay mentioned before, we were previously hosting Gatsby on Netlify, and we tried Netlify builds, and we tried Jenkins builds. And pretty much as soon as we could, we started using Gatsby Cloud for incremental builds. And we got some pretty cool features with that. We got the preview button. We got the iframe option to preview for Gatsby preview. And as soon as we kind of started realizing the power of Gatsby Cloud, we stopped using Jenkins. And then when we moved away from Jenkins, we found out that we were doing some performance audits, and Netlify just really wasn't cutting it for speed. So we started to evaluate CloudFront and S3, and they were really cool solutions, but we were like 90% there, and it was just too complicated. And like that week, Gatsby Cloud announced that they were offering hosting. So we're like, you know what, we will go ahead and join this as well. We will go Gatsby all the way. And I have noticed a big performance difference in our experience since we've hosted on Gatsby Cloud. So now we have our builds, our hosting, and our Gatsby preview all in Gatsby Cloud. So it's all in one experience. The incremental builds are running at about 44 seconds, whereas Jenkins had to do a full build every time, and that was more along the lines of 10 minutes. So that's a big difference for us. Another really cool feature is with Gatsby Cloud, we get Gatsby preview, we get our own server for that. And in combination with the Gatsby button, we have the ability to add Gatsby preview within the node view page on the CMS. So it's a seamless experience for our editors. All right, so what were some of our key takeaways? First, Gatsby Cloud has proven successful for us. It has simplified our building process and saved us a lot of time on builds. Even though it's a static site generator and you hear the word static, it still dynamically creates content, and we can still use component-based development. So our editors are still having a very dynamic custom experience. Gatsby and Drupal have proven to scale at the enterprise level. So yes, we've been using at mediacurrent.com, which is actually a pretty large site. We have also successfully used it for Mag Mutual and Sandy Springs in Georgia. And I recommend keeping Gatsby up to date to the latest. That's how you can get the best support. However, also be sure to really test it because you might have some dependencies or maybe something that you're using that isn't ready yet. But the community is so big and supportive that it won't take long. So be sure to keep up to date. Be sure to test. And last but not least, enjoy your lightning fast websites. And thank you. My name is Madeline, and I appreciate your time. And good luck with your Gatsby sites.